Somebody then made a link between the Cushing's and what was the cause of it. So how was that made?
That was done through scans, and they thought we'll have a scan you, and then they found out this great huge tumour on my right adrenal gland. He said normally his tumour is probably about 1 centimetre. He says you've got at least a 6.2 centimetre, rather large tumour on the adrenal gland. And then they found metastases, unfortunately, on my lungs as well. This is when they first mentioned the word cancer. You know.
Yes.
And
how do you feel that was handled at the time by the team?
I think it was handled very well. When I saw Dr. Levy, he said to me, he says, I don't like to give people this, he said, but, you know, he said, I will be referring you on to oncology. But he did say to me, he said, go away, he said, with your husband, because he always came with me for every hospital appointment. And he says, go away with him, come back, and he says, have a coffee, have a think. He says, be gone as long as you want. He says, I will be here, and you can come back and talk to me if you want. He says, or if not, he says, if you want to go home, just phone me, and I'll speak to you. In
a way, that's a nice way of doing things, because when anyone receives that bad news, you know, that information about, cancer, often you can't take in what you need to at that time. So having like a period where you can revisit is perhaps a good idea.
It was for me, especially because all I said to Graham was, let's go home. I don't think it computed really. I thought, right, okay, that's okay. Tell me that now. Let's just go home. I just want to go home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you'd have another chance to talk later anyway, wouldn't you?
Yeah. Oh, most definitely.
Hopefully, you know, in a short space of time. So what did you manage to find out? Because you had access to medical information.
And what I found out that the metastases on the lungs and what have you, or you get ovarian metastases, which is more common than the lung ones. Lung ones are very rare, and what have you. And then I read up on treatments and prognosis, and neither was very helpful really. So I thought, stop reading about it because it's making you worse. You know?
That's a controversial area, isn't it? Because anyone can go on the internet now and look up information. Really, the difficult thing is, are you finding good information, i.e. information that's useful to you at that stage, or are there some sorts of information which really aren't that helpful? I find a lot of them aren't that helpful. They're more scaremongering. It's always I think we all focus on the doom and the gloom instead of the positive. You know, at that first stage, I think it's always doom and gloom to begin with, and until you start your journey, and you find out what can be done, and you have to take each stage as and when it comes. When you're having kind of that information that's perhaps one negative on top of another, there's a lot, you know, that's weighing down on you. But did you find there was a certain stage where maybe somebody came along who was giving you more hope or encouragement about what they're going to do and what the future might hold? Well, yes, when we finally got, then I didn't start treatment. This was in September. I had the operation in October, but I didn't start treatment until the end of January. Right. And because it's such a rare cancer, it's dealt with in a rather unusual way, in which I have to have blood tests. I used to have blood tests every 3 weeks, and it was a drug I took called mitotane. And you have to have a certain amount of mitotane in your bloodstream for it to start working. And they start you off on the lowest dose, and then you go on with that. And I was never ever reaching the right level in my blood. It was always far too low. And I was on the maximum dose and it was still on the low side, and I was starting to really despair that I was ever going to reach the right, you know, this was ever going to work for me, because as I was told, this is the only real treatment they have for this type of cancer. There's no other type of treatment. There's no surgery, there's nothing else. This was prescribed from the oncologist? The oncologist, yeah.